but I'll just get started introducing myself. My name is Carlos Quintero. I'm the General Manager of Seawater Authority. And before I really introduce the topic, just to make sure, I heard that there was a meeting next door with Mayor McCann. Yeah, no, it's canceled. I just want to make sure that, we're here from Seawater Authority talking about, I don't know what the mayor had to talk about, but we're here to talk about water. So I just wanted to make sure that you're in the right meeting. Of course, if you're in the wrong meeting, it's a public meeting, you're all welcome. And I'll just give a brief introduction why we're here, what we've done so far regarding this topic. And then I'll turn it over to Justin Brazil, our Director of Water Quality. He has some more in-depth presentation. We want to make this a dialogue, so if you have any questions or something that you want more clarification, just raise your hand and we'll provide, I'll answer your question or provide any information that you'd like. So, any questions so far? Okay, well, the reason why we're here is that we are your water supplier if you are within the Seawater Authority service area.
Could you speak more into the mic, please?
Yeah, of course. That better? Yeah, I'll try to. Maybe that works a little better. So we are the water supplier for Bonita area, Western Chula Vista. That is roughly west of the 805, north of Main Street, and National City. We are a joint powers authority. For those of you that are not familiar with the concept, it's two agencies or more agencies come together for a particular purpose. In this case, when you vote, if you live in the Bonita area, you vote for a South Bay Water representative. Director Elizabeth Cox is your representative. And if you live in one of the other districts, then you vote for somebody else. But South Bay Water and National City joint efforts came together in 1977 to create Seawater Authority. So we do have a board of directors. The 5 members from South Bay Water sit on our board and 2 members appointed by National City. So we have a governing board of 7 directors. Well, 5 from South Bay and 2 appointed from the city of National City. We do have access to a lot of local water. We are pretty unique in that respect compared to other counties other agencies from the county of San Diego, and really compared to other medium-sized water districts throughout the state. Seawater Authority owns and operates Sweetwater Reservoir, Sweetwater Dam, Sweetwater Reservoir, located just up the street in Spring Valley, and then there's a second dam, Loveland Dam, that's located in Alpine. And traditionally, surface water provides about 50% of the water. We also have access to what's known as the San Diego Formation. This is a brackish groundwater aquifer that underlies the whole lower portion of the service area, so the Chula Vista and National City area. So that water is a bit too salty. It's about 2,000 parts per million salt. Not as salty as the ocean. It's about over 35,000. But it's too high for us to be able to deliver that water, so it has to be treated, and we use a facility, a reverse osmosis facility that's located on 2nd Avenue, just north of the 54 freeway. And that facility provides about 40% of the total water on an average year. Surface water from Sweetwater Reservoir provides about 50%, and then 10% comes from the National City wells located in northern National City. And these wells access freshwater sources located under the brackish groundwater San Diego Formation. It's been described to us by USGS as very old, 30,000-year-old ice age water. And those three supplies are our main local water supply. On a what year, like this is dry, but the past few years we have no rain. We can go pretty much a long time with using local water. When for other reasons, like usually drought, then we're able to buy water from the county water authority as well. So there's been an order, DDW, Division of Drinking Water, they regulate the water. So anything that we do regarding our system, it has to be approved by them. So we're in constant communication. And EPA sets the national rules to the Drinking Water Act. So we were required to sample as part of the unregulated monitoring, unregulated contaminant monitoring, or 5, to test for these PFAS substances that are also known as your forever substances. These substances have been around for decades. I'm sure there's a variety. It's a group of substances, thousands of them. Basically, EPA has set rules that will go into effect in 2029 that regulate 6 of them. So there's going to be strict limits and basically what we found that we exceed those limits. So we've been this is our 3rd workshop. We had one in National City a couple weeks ago, then we had one in Chula Vista Library last week, and now we have this one as well, to basically inform you what we found and where we are with this situation. So that is really my intro, but again, ground rules is a discussion, public discussion, not a debate. If anybody wants to speak, just raise your hand, as I mentioned, if you want something clarified or you have a further question. And listen in respect to others' points of view. So, I will really, this is the agenda, I hinted at this, but the purpose of the meeting I mentioned, I already talked a little bit about what SWA is, the agency, the water utility. Water PFAS, and this will be Justin presenting the regulations, testing results that we'll share with you, potential solutions, and Q&A and next steps. So really with that, I will turn it over to Justin unless there are specific questions from you or anything. Or if you have questions along the way, I'll be here, so feel free to raise your hand and ask. But I already covered this, but I can certainly go through it again. I did mention the 5 divisions for South Bay Water, as you can see in the map, in the National City. So in general, you have the reservoir. You see it in the top right corner. That's the water reservoir, and water feeds along the Bonita Valley and down into the Chula Vista, Western Chula Vista National City. We do have the water supply, the Reynolds plant. You see, this is the Reynolds plant right here. So when this is operating, you kind of get some of this water mostly in this area, and then the National City wells are over here. I think over here, this is where they are. But then this area, so Bonita, for the most part of an average, day or month, is served mostly, well, not mostly, all by this Sweetwater Reservoir, along with probably the eastern portion of the service area and part of the southern portion of the area. So I already talked about the water sources. I don't know if there's any other questions, but we're going to be focusing on the Sweetwater Reservoir. And I think there's a video. I think at this point, I'll turn it over to Justin, and he'll get certainly more into the details and more information. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. Again, my name is Justin Brazil, and I'm Sweetwater Authority's Director of Water Quality. The slide where Carlos left me is a video, but actually, if it's okay, I'd like to just back up just a little bit here and go back to the graphic here that shows our service area. And the reason I wanted to point this out is because what we're going to be talking about tonight, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, other known as PFAS. What we're going to be presenting tonight is really related to PFAS that was detected from water treated at the Purdue Water Treatment Plant that comes out of Sweetwater Reservoir. And on this graphic, I wanted to point out that our other water sources that we have, our groundwater desalination facility and our fresh groundwaters in Northern National City, those do not have detectable levels of PFAS coming out of the effluent of those plants. And so I just wanted to point out tonight, the data we're going to be talking about, it's related to Sweetwater Reservoir. Let's see.
You might have heard about testing regulations related to PFAS in water treated from Sweetwater Reservoir. PFAS is a complicated topic and an issue that water providers across the globe are facing since this substance is so prevalent in our society. These forever chemicals are found in everyday items like firefighting foam, cookware, clothing, and food packaging. They are slow to break down, and when discarded, they can enter our environment and water supply. Sweetwater Authority is in the process of conducting 4 tests over a year to better understand the situation and confirm exact levels of PFAS in the water supply. This will give the authority information to evaluate potential solutions. While compliance with the EPA's new guidelines isn't needed until April 2029, here's what we're doing now to address this issue. Expanding testing and monitoring, determining the sources of PFAS, engaging in public outreach. You can get involved by visiting our PFAS education page, joining a public workshop, or contacting us with questions. Together, we'll protect our water supply and your public health and safety.
Okay, so what are sorry, I have to make sure I speak into the microphone here. So again, what are PFAS? A long acronym for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And as the general manager mentioned, Carlos Quintero, there's thousands of these chemicals in our environments. They're man-made chemicals, they're synthetic, and in fact, they're designed to be very strong and indestructible, and that's why they were called forever chemicals. They're made up of a bond between carbon and fluorine. It's one of the strongest bonds in nature, and so used in a variety of products where they worked really well. Firefighting foam, non-stick cookware, stain-resistant carpet, wrinkle-free clothing, food packaging. Very good for that purpose, but unfortunately, they do present health effects, and when they get into our environment, they tend to last forever, and they're very difficult to get rid of. And so that's the big challenge with them. And so just another graphic here showing landfills. So just about probably every landfill in the United States is going to have PFAS containing debris that was disposed in it, because these chemicals were originally manufactured and started being used in the 1940s. And so we've been disposing of these products containing these for a long time. And they still haven't been phased out completely worldwide or in the United States. So they were probably more prevalent at one time, but they're still not fully phased out. And also firefighting foam, wastewater sites, I mentioned, consumer products, and then ultimately they can percolate into the drinking water supply, either by infiltration through the groundwater into an aquifer, runoff into streams, or which gets in the rivers and reservoirs like Sweetwater Reservoir. And so the EPA is aware, Environmental Protection Agency is aware that PFAS is a very large and persistent issue in the United States. And so the graphic here is just showing how persistent it is. And it's not just in water. This graphic shows that it's kind of everywhere. It's in water, it's in biological tissue, it's in air, soil, sediment. And so water is one exposure route to PFAS chemicals, but there are many others. But if we go to the next slide here, it still, of course, shows very, very persistent and prevalent in water as well, even when you remove everything else. And so this is a very important problem to solve, but also a very expensive problem to solve globally, ultimately, but really in the United States, we're looking at $200 billion in order to remediate for PFAS in this country. And so recently, the Environmental Protection Agency, who regulates drinking water in the United States, issued a new national primary drinking water standard in April of last year to address PFAS. I'll get into the details of that a little bit more, but just to point out, Sweetwater has actually been monitoring regularly for PFAS since 2019 under a variety of what are called monitoring orders that the state provides to us. And they've been given out throughout the state to a variety of water agencies, but it's been predominantly groundwater. And that's what we had been monitoring for quite a number of years, is groundwater. And like I said, we do have a lot of groundwater in our system, but we do not detect it in the water, the treated water being delivered from those water treatment facilities. And so the EPA is regulating PFAS. I mentioned there's thousands of different PFAS chemicals, but they're not regulating all of them. Or right now they've chosen to come up with what's called 6 maximum contaminant levels. And maximum contaminant levels are really, one way of describing it, it's the regulatory definition of a standard for what is safe in drinking water that the EPA sets. And so those are the standards that a water provider has to meet in order to say that your water is meeting all the required standards. And so that lowest level is being set for 2 of the PFAS at 4 parts per trillion, which is a pretty low level, and I'll put that in context on another slide here. But what are water utilities required to do now? So this rule came out in April of last year. Well, it's a phased-in regulation, and so the first thing that water utilities are required to do is what's called initial monitoring. And so by 2027, utilities have to perform 1 year of quarterly monitoring. And what that does is, of course, it tells the EPA, the regulators, is it in your water or not, and are you going to have to address it? It also helps the utility, if they have it, understand how are they going to address it and how are they going to treat for it. But it also determines the utility's monitoring schedule. So the higher levels you have, the more frequently you're going to have to monitor when the rule goes into effect. The lower levels, if they're not detected, be a lower monitoring frequency. And so there's another rule that water utilities have to follow, and that Carlos mentioned. It's called the UCMR5, or Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule. And so that's monitoring that the EPA does, requires utilities to do periodically, where we test for a variety of chemicals in the water that may not yet be regulated, but the EPA uses this data to determine the persistence of chemicals in the environment. And then ultimately they may make a regulatory determination on regulating those chemicals in the future. And so it just so happens that this UCMR period is happening where we are required to monitor is between 2023 and through 2025. And the EPA sets the schedule for utilities when you monitor. It just worked out for Sweetwater Authority that our schedule with the EPA to monitor for UCMR5, which contains PFAS, it started in October of last year, right about the same time that this new National Primary Drinking Water Standard came out. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we're kind of doing both at the same time. We're monitoring for the UCMR, but we're also going to be using that data to comply with the initial monitoring requirements for the new PFAS drinking water standard. And so I guess I'll wait because I'm going to, I'll just mention here, but in January was when we did our first official, our second round of monitoring. Our first round was in October, and then we did our quarter two in January. So to kind of put in perspective what the 4 parts per trillion looks like, it's like 1 drop of water in 5 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So 5 Olympic-sized swimming pools, approximately 3.3 million gallons of water. That's a very, very small amount of anything to measure. And there's a graphic I have on another slide that'll kind of show how what we can measure for PFAS has changed over the years, because there's really been a lot of development in this over the last 16 years or so. Right here. So back in 2009, the EPA had what's called a health advisory for 2 PFAS compounds, PFOA and PFOS. These are just 2 of the most common out of thousands. But these health advisory levels that they set back in 2009, these health advisories they're non-regulatory health-based standards, but utilities don't have to act on them. But they help guide the future or can help guide regulations. So that's 2009. And then we move forward to 2016, and that level dropped from 400 and 200 down to 70. But that 70 means that it's combined. The sum of PFOA and PFOS being less than 70 would meet the health advisory level. Then we fast forward a few more years to 2029 when these new requirements will actually go into effect, but the rule was developed in 2024. But what I want to show here is, we've came a long ways, because the health advisory level was initially at 400 parts per trillion as an advisory, non-enforceable, non-regulatory. And fast forward many years, and now the regulatory level is going to be set at 4 parts per trillion, 100 times lower than where the advisory level was in 2009. So a lot of change in the regulatory framework. Their health advisories, and then transitioning those ultimately into maximum contaminant levels for PFAS compounds. And then with the analytical technology that we have to actually detect and measure these, there's been a lot of changes there too. So back in 2012, what we call in the laboratory and water world reporting levels were 40 parts per trillion for PFOS and 20 parts per trillion for PFOA. What is a reporting level? So anything detected below a reporting level is reported as not detected. If it's above a reporting level, it's reported as what it is. And there's reasons for that, because any analytical method has some level of uncertainty at a certain level. And so when the data is below that level, at least back at that time, there was uncertainty in the data, so it's not detected. But analytical technology has improved and continues to improve. And so by 2016, that reporting level dropped for PFOS by a factor of 10. And so now we're looking at reporting levels of 4 parts per trillion per the EPA method. So a lot of advancements there, which has ultimately allowed the EPA also to be able to regulate that load, because before we weren't even able to accurately measure that load. Now we can, so we can regulate at lower levels. And so beyond the primary drinking water standard that goes into effect in 2029 by the EPA, the state of California already has some regulatory framework in place for PFAS compounds in the form of what's called notification levels and response levels. One of the main differences, though, between these and what I was talking about with the EPA's National Primary Drinking Water Standard is these are non-enforceable health-based standards, sort of like the health advisory level, similar, but these require notification and sometimes the consideration of actions. And so you may have heard back in December, Sweetwater Authority did do some notification because the first quarter sampling that we did in October, when we received that data in November, we were above the notification level for one of the PFAS compounds. And so as required, Sweetwater Authority did perform notification for that. Then we did our quarter 2 monitoring, and we found out that now one of those PFAS, which is PFOA, is now, actually, sorry, it was 2 notification levels back in October. Then when we did quarter 2 monitoring, one of those notification levels then elevated above the level to turn it into what's called a response level. Now, the difference with the response level is there's still notification requirements that are associated with that, elevated notification requirements, but an agency also has to consider whether to take a source out of service, blend to bring the levels down, treat, or notify the public. And so here is a summary of data that we have so far from the treated water leaving the Purdue Water Treatment Plant in Spring Valley while treating water from Sweetwater Reservoir. And so the way the table here is organized is we have what we've detected over response and notification levels at the top here. So for the PFHXS, this is the one where we exceeded the notification level in quarter 1 and also quarter 2, and then PFOA, which has a response level of 10, was just below that in quarter 1, and then in quarter 2, it elevated above the 10 and now became in excess of the response level. Then the authority decided just to look for variability. Let's see if we grab another sample in quarter 2, what will happen. And the data in our quarter 2 confirmation sample, which was just done a couple weeks ago, came out a little bit similar. However, the PFOA did kind of return back to sort of where it was during quarter 1, just showing that there is a little bit of variability in data. Maybe not drastic, but it does tend to go up and down. And those, trying to understand why the levels change and fluctuate is also part of understanding how to deal with and handle with the PFAS moving forward for Sweetwater Authority. Yes.
That is the lowest level. I mean, that is like saying it shouldn't be anything below that. In other words, are we basing our best on the lowest number and below?
Sorry, I'm trying to understand.
It's contaminated, and we're already going over those numbers, but our baseline is going to be the worst that possible number that the government will allow.
Not necessarily, no. This is just where we're at right now without any treatment in place. And so, oh, yes, sir, sorry.
But you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
We're kind of measuring everything on the worst scenario.
Well, right now I'm just comparing it to the California notification response levels. But just so you, that right now the Purdue Water Treatment Plant does not have technology in place to treat for chemicals like PFAS. So this, and nor really do any conventional surface water treatment plants. So this is really the worst it would be, but if in the future we're exploring installing treatment, then that would significantly lower the levels of PFAS. Yes, sir.
Let me understand, so you have the first quarter testing and the second quarter testing. Second quarter testing was higher. Does the total volume of water in the reservoir affect this results that you come up with?
It may. That's something we don't know yet, but that's very possible. Yes, that's something we're thinking about. We just don't have enough data at this point to know. So far the winter's been pretty dry, and so we're in the process of actually drawing the reservoir down. It hasn't increased significantly at all from any rainfall that we've received this fairly dry winter, except like the other week. So it's really just been on a drawdown still. And so yes, the Q2 data did climb a little bit. So one has to wonder, does the reservoir level have something to do with it? But we just don't have enough data to say for certain yet.
Just adding to that, because the reservoir is at the lowest level I've seen it in years. And I think one of the reasons it's you keeping it low is the evaporation, and you want to keep the water at a higher level in the facilities that are feeding it or waiting for the luck of the rain to fill it up. So that is a possibility there. Okay.
And then just so I understand, you have the notification levels number and the response level number. So those two numbers in the last two columns, that's what our numbers are being compared to?
That's what we're comparing them against in this table, correct? Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. I think you were first. Sorry. Go ahead, please. Yes.
You said that it was done at the Purdue plant, the testing was done there?
Correct.
So where is the Purdue? Is it at the reservoir or National City?
Okay, so yeah, the Purdue, when you drive on the 125 or Highway 54 and you see Sweetwater Dam, the treatment plant's right adjacent to Sweetwater Dam. Yep.
I can scroll.
Can everybody hear the question? If you want to repeat the question.
Sure. The question was, where is the Purdue water treatment plant located? And so it's located adjacent to Sweetwater Reservoir, right next to the dam, on the wet side of the dam. Yes.
Do you have a standardized protocol for how you're sampling the water, and is it consistently done each time?
That's a great question. So PFAS sampling has to be done very carefully. And when we first started doing it, our laboratory staff had to become familiar and train themselves with a pretty extensive guidance manual from the state of California on how to sample for PFAS. And the reason for that is because it's so persistent in the environment. If you don't follow appropriate protocols, you could get false positives for PFAS. And so for example, they have to consider when they last got gasoline for their car, if they're wearing new clothing that hasn't been laundered yet. Personal care products like makeup have to be considered, deodorant. And so there's a variety of things in the guidance that, yes, our staff is trained and they have to follow that. And then on top of that, there's also quality control associated with it. So they have what are called field reagent blanks. And so it's a blank sample that you bring with you, and at the same time you sample. So if you get a detection, you also analyze the blank. If the blank has contamination, then you might say, this might be environmental external contamination, you would call it. So yes, there's definitely protocols in place for this, and you have to be very careful because it's persistent and the levels we're measuring for are so low.
What's the treatment? What's the treatment solution you're looking at?
So there's really three main what are called best available technologies, or BATs we call them in the water industry, for PFAS. One of those is reverse osmosis, and so our groundwater desalination facility already has reverse osmosis. So it's in a sense protected from PFAS because it's great at removing that. The surface water plant does not currently have any treatment technology installed that's a best available technology for removal of PFAS. But at that facility, the most likely technology that would go in would be what's called ion exchange or granular activated carbon.
Is that something you're going to fund, or?
That's something that we will be looking into, yes. And we're looking and estimating at probably somewhere around $40 million to treat for that. Yes, sir.
I think your earlier slide mentioned that you have 400 miles of pipes. Is the sampling done only at the source, or do you also sample all the way to the tap or somewhere along?
Thank you for the question. So for the EPA rules and monitoring orders that I'm talking about here, they're very specific. But for UCMR and the National Primary Drinking Water Standard, you're required to sample at what's called the entry point to the distribution system, meaning the water leaving your water treatment facility, like the moment it's leaving to go to the customer.
Is this the highest that you've seen it in history in history of Sweetwater Authority? Is this the highest level that 11 before?
Good, great question. So the data that you see here is the data that we have for detections in Sweetwater Reservoir. So this is the history of it. So the highest, whatever the highest values we see on this slide are the highest that we know of.
So like, 5 years ago, that it was lower, right?
We don't have we don't have that information.
Okay. So,
Didn't you say earlier that you had been testing since 2019?
Our groundwater sources. Groundwater, but not surface water. The monitoring orders were not for the groundwater. The monitoring orders were only for groundwater at that time. However, I will mention that in January, they amended the statewide monitoring order to include Sweetwater Reservoir now to be monitored quarterly. So that is something that we're going to be having to do now.
So her question there, and kind of beat me to the punch, I think I can speak pretty loudly, is that only this first quarter and the second quarter is the history of probing data that we have. So for a lot of us living here in Bonita Valley for decades, we don't know how far back this goes.
We don't know. All we know is that PFAS has been used in the United States for decades, but we don't know what the levels have been in the drinking water supply for decades. Yes.
Two quick questions. One is, if the EPA changes its monitoring requirements, if the EPA changes or eliminates its monitoring requirements, will the California monitoring requirements continue and be implemented? And the second question is this handout available on your website so I can share it with my neighborhood group?
Sure. The handouts are all going to be available on the website. And far as what California does with the regulation, I can't definitively answer that at this point because I don't know. But what I can tell you is that the way it works in the regulatory environment is California can always take California is the primacy agency. So the EPA sets the standards, but California, being the primacy agency, can choose to make them equal or stricter. So California could choose to do that, but I don't know at this point.
And is this available online?
It is available now online if you go to our water quality under PFAS on the LetNet site tab there. The presentation is there with today's date.
Thank you, it's okay.
Yes.
So we know about this subject now. Do we know what the side effects are? Is there some sort of are you going to get to that, or are we going to?
Sure. So no, I can talk about that. So there's a lot of different PFAS chemicals, but generally they could be carcinogens, hormone disruptors, cause thyroid, kidney, reproductive issues, a variety of health issues associated with them, and that's why they're being regulated. Yes.
Good evening, neighbors. We are searching for clean water. We traveled from District 9 of San Diego City. We don't have clean water there. We have issue on fire. The firefighters are not authorized to enter private property to put out the fire. Our councilor says, oh, thank you. We were expecting solution. Oh, thank you, because, thank you, elementary school, for the nice and orderly evacuation. That is not the solution. We need water to clean water, to clean the treatment plant, the reverse osmosis. We have a filter at home. You need more water to clean the filter. So we need water, sir. My question is, the Navy is using desalination, Carlsbad, political will, they were able to put up desalination. We are in search of water, sir. That's why we were supposed to attend the meeting with Chula Vista Mayor, but it was postponed. Providence, we are all here in need of clean water.
okay.
When we treat the water from the dam, it produces clean water and sludge. And that sludge has to be converted before it goes to the tributaries, to the ocean. Look at this, what's happening in the Tijuana River issue. Air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, ocean pollution. I want my sweetheart live longer. That's why we are in search of clean water. And Bonita, my first residence, over there. And we pay water so much. So much. But we have to mix our urine with clean water to fertilize the plant so that we have a better, clean solution. My question, sir, is, when do you think we could put up more desalination plants?
More desalination facilities. So That is something that the authority is, we're very interested in groundwater at Sweetwater Authority because, compared to the rest of the county of San Diego, we're actually very fortunate and unique in the fact that we do have groundwater. Other areas like Orange County and Los Angeles, they have a lot more groundwater. We're very unique in San Diego. And so when we look at water resource master planning, those are things that we've looked at, can we develop more groundwater sources? But I don't have a date I could provide her at this time. It's still something we would need to study.
Follow-up questions. I'm sorry to monopolize this. I'm not corrupting your time, precious time now. But we have to contribute to you our issue. The premier city. I even spelled out to them what is corruption. Corruption equals monopoly. Discretionary. Minus accountability. They are pinpointing who are these contractors on the clean water in San Diego City, connected with this county public utility. They cannot pinpoint responsibility, accountability, and we are blackmailed by the city mayor. Hey, you have to approve the amendments of the renewal of the contract because these lands should be treated. And it is happening also in our district here. Forgive me, sir. Pardon me. I'm ready to be restrained, but this is the truth. It is politicized. It's all about money. When do we have to buy water? When do we have the Pacific Ocean?
Sit down, let him talk.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you.
With regards to, you talked about the side effects and consequences of these contaminants in the water. Do you have any idea yet that when is the dangerous level, the number? When is, everybody's different.
Yes, and I definitely understand the concern. And so, with us being water providers, we have to follow the guidance, the standards that the Environmental Protection Agency or State of California said. So it's those agencies that do the health studies to determine the safe levels. And so, like I was mentioning before, maximum contaminant levels are what they said as really the regulatory definition of what is considered safe. But I'm not qualified to speak of how little below or how much above that standard is and relative to how severe or the level of magnitude that a health effect may be. I wouldn't be able to be qualified to answer that.
So right now, we just kind of go on the notification and the response levels numbers.
Correct. Yes.
Well, everything that I've read online, I've done quite a bit of research on this, the safe level is 0. There is no level of PFAS that is safe for human consumption. And also that if they were to test everybody in this room, our blood, you would have some level of PFAS in your blood at this point. It's almost inescapable at this point. I think the question is how we're going to remove it so we don't get any more of it through our water or through any other source. I think that's what needs to be addressed.
Thank you for mentioning that. So there's maximum contaminant levels, and then there's maximum contaminant level goals. And so the maximum contaminant level goal for PFOA and PFOS are going to be at 0. And that's the level that the EPA has determined that there is no health effect. But when they set a standard, they also have to set it at a level that's economically and also technologically feasible to obtain. So, and that's why over years, water quality regulations will develop, and as technologies improve and new treatment technologies become available, the regulatory agencies do adjust standards as time moves on.
Yes. Are there any international standards for this? Have other countries been measuring this for some time?
That's a good question, but I'm not going to be able to answer that. It's a great question.
Where do we sit San Diego wide with our numbers, and then where do we kind of sit California wide? Like how, our 11 points, to give it perspective, and so we can kind of understand,
Sure.
right, where the alarm, obviously we're all here because we care about clean water, but.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I don't have that data. Sure, the question was how do our levels compare to generally other water sources across the state of California. We're not the only water source, Sweetwater Reservoir, that has detectable PFAS in the state of California, but I can't accurately, without the data in front of me, speak to what those levels are in comparison to ours. But a lot of groundwater, it's been found in a lot of groundwater. I can definitely speak to that, probably more than surface water.
You have more slides that you want to show us?
Yes. So the next couple graphics here are just graphically showing where our detections have been for quarter one and quarter two in relation to the existing California notification and response levels in the 2016 EPA health advisory. And so on the graphic here, you can see, as I explained before, for the PFOA, where we were above the notification level in quarter one and above the response level in quarter two. And the following graphic here, same thing, visually explains, but except for the other detection, PFHXS, where we were above the notification level for both quarters, but below the response level. And so what are we doing? So we're continuing, and we're going to continue conducting regular testing. And we've completed 2 of 4 tests. So we still have April and July to complete our 1 year of initial monitoring again, which is important to understand how PFAS levels may vary over time and inform any types of treatment decisions that we're going to need to make in the future. And we're going to be looking and we're exploring treatment options. And also, as I mentioned, this is potentially $40 million worth of treatment. So any opportunities that we have to seek funding, federal and state funding to help pay for this, we're definitely going to be doing that. Evaluating the best approach, so we kind of covered that, for the surface water plant, it's going to likely be granular activated carbon or ion exchange. And, getting ourselves ready because, 2029, it's 2025 now, but it'll be coming up. And so this is something that the authority is taking very, very seriously and understanding this is a significant fiscal impact. So that kind of ties back to, anything we can do to offset that cost for our ratepayers and finding state and federal funding to help offset it. And then continuing to keep the community informed is important. And that's why we have this meeting tonight. And thank you for everybody for being here. And we do understand that there's concerns about this. We don't have treatment in place right now for these levels, and we realize that we're above the health and the response levels, or have been in some cases for recent monitoring we've done. However, the EPA does have guidance on their websites for home filtration devices that can be purchased to reduce or remove PFAS chemicals, and those devices need to be NSF certified for the 53 and 58 standards. That's National Sanitation Foundation, so they set standards for drinking water. And definitely with any type of filtration device that's used at home, regardless of what you're using it for to remove, follow the manufacturer's guidelines for maintenance. And this, the question was asked about this presentation will be available. So, this is, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows if you take a picture of it now or find it later on our website. But these are the links on the EPA's website where they provide guidance for how these, what types of home filtration devices work, and the types of certifications and a lot more information there. And just a visual of what I said previously is to where we're at on the pie chart, where we're halfway through, at least with our initial monitoring, so quarter one and quarter two complete, and April and July still to come. And just an overall timeline of where we were and where we're going. So again, April 2024, the National Primary Drinking Water Standard was issued by the EPA. Because of the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule regulation, we decided to start doing our monitoring in October, which is when the EPA told us to start monitoring, and the UCMR includes PFAS, coincidentally. And then we received our first sampling results in November. We exceeded a notification level for 2 of the PFAS compounds, which then in December launched our public outreach campaign. January, we performed our second quarter monitoring plus a confirmation sample. And then in April and July will be our quarter and quarter 3 sampling. And then we fast forward a few years, and by April of 2029, we have to be in compliance with the new federal standards, or we'll be in violation of drinking water standards. So again, it's a critical moment for the authority. We understand this is important to the community. It's important to us. There's significant costs associated with PFAS. And it's not just the initial capital investment. There will also be ongoing operational maintenance costs associated with the treatment. The treatment technologies are expensive to install, but then the filtration medias that absorb PFAS are also expensive, and they have not an infinite, but a finite lifespan, and so they will have to be either regenerated, disposed of, and replenished, and there's significant costs associated with that as well. And switching to alternate water sources is also very expensive too, and could cost the authority, in the order of millions of dollars per year in itself. And so far as our community outreach efforts, we had a community advisory working group on January 28th. Other than the public notification we did at a special board meeting back in December, this was really the official launch of the campaign, I should say, and then 3 community workshops. And so we've had one in National City, Chula Vista last week, and then we're here in Bonita with you tonight. We do have information on our website, sweetwater.org/PFAS, and that's where you can also find all the materials, our FAQs, our copies of our presentation, video recordings. We're keeping that updated. We're working with a consulting firm, JPW. They're doing an excellent job helping us keep on top of this. We have a PFAS hotline. We have a PFAS email. You could sign up for that. You could ask questions through that, and then attend a meeting, which is why we're here tonight. And so, as I mentioned, the materials are this a graphic of, that's actually our website there, where you can find information. And happy to continue asking any questions at this point.
Based on the timeline that you had up there,
Based on the timeline that was showing up there, so I'm thinking that this, until July's testing, that's all you're going to be doing right now. And then you have until a little over 3 years to be in compliance. I'd like to be optimistic to think that you could make decisions based on your data and your findings, and that you could perhaps get something in place before April of 29, but is that realistic?
That's a good question. And I guess just because the regulation goes into effect in April 2029 doesn't mean that it may not be in place before, but I don't know it at this time. We're still in the data gathering phase, exploratory phase, seeing what's.
Nothing will happen, really.
Or I guess the other way is nothing, from the regulatory standpoint, nothing has to happen until then, but it doesn't necessarily mean that would be the case.
Yes, sir.
This is directly from your website. Sweetwater Authority has settled with some of the PFAS manufacturer for money to contend with the PFAS in the system within the litigation. For different PFAS manufacturers, it ranges. You guys have listed 3M, DuPont, Dyco, BAFAs. How much of that money is being allocated to numbers we've heard over previous meetings of the $40 million in infrastructure that's going to be required?
Good question. So this is about the settlement. So there's an effort nationwide to make all the manufacturers accountable. The main ones, Robert did mention 3M, DuPont, there's Tyco, there's B, and there's others. The authority is pursuing some of these, sign on to the class action. So far, there's been a settlement with 2 other manufacturers, 3M and DuPont. So that is part one. The other part, we don't know how much money we're getting. We just at this point has not been determined. But there'll be, there is a settlement number, there'll be a settlement amount. And again, we just don't know. Most likely, in my sense, it's going to be some fraction of pennies on the dollar as far as, Justin did mention $40 million roughly to put something in place. I mean, it'd be super awesome and hit the jackpot if we get $40 million out of this, but I very much doubt it. So that is, we'll know shortly. As soon as we know, it's going to be, as soon as we find out, we'll literally bring it to the board, and have to be some kind of a special fund to keep this funding.
Did you think that money will go to?
Yes. So, you know, this one, I know there's been a lot of questions as far as, you know, where we are, what's next. You know, once a plan once we know a plan, I mean, there has to be some kind of funding plan for it. So certainly that money will help, you know, towards that cult. Is it enough? You know, again, I'm not really, I don't have the information to tell you. There is, you know, I mean, at some point as we move forward, this is an issue of statewide interest, and I can tell you that there's legislation being proposed. I don't think necessarily has been introduced at the state level to have a PFAS mitigation fund. So we're keeping an eye on this, actually working with the bill author to make sure that, you know, our ratepayers are made whole to some extent. But, you know, we're not the only one as far as statewide. So, but again, it's going to require, you know, a lot of support. And, you know, it is a community system. I mean, you all pay, all the ratepayers pay for it. That is really our only source of revenue. We don't get any property taxes. It's all based on the rates. You know, other districts do get a portion of property tax. We don't. We get rates from the ratepayers, and we have a very small what we call non-water revenue, which is we lease the tank sites to the cell phone companies. That's the bulk of the revenue. So these are all very good questions. You know, again, we're trying to understand what the issue is. You know, looking at potential sources, we don't know. I know the question was made by General Pack. I mean, this has been the issue. I mean, I suspect, you know, when and how. You know, these are good questions. We're reacting to the information that we have now. So as we learn more, as we get a basis for, you know, what potentially this is going to look like, it would be, you start with some kind of design basis, and then you start looking at, you know, the specific treatment might differ depending on if you have more of this one PFAS or more of the other. So these questions, you know, we just don't know. We don't have an answer for it. But this, our goal is to, as we learn more, we share this with you. Yes.
Justin, on one slide, previous you stated that filtration systems will be added at significant cost. I'd like to know what the definition of significant is, but more importantly, as this has, now that awareness has been raised, is there some sort of consortium in the industry or in the technological area that's working on filtration systems that we're part of?
We're not necessarily part of a consortium working on filtration technologies. Like I mentioned earlier, the three best available technologies right now are granular activated carbon, ion exchange, and reverse osmosis. There are novel technologies being worked on, and you know, more at the research level right now, where they're looking at new types of destructive technologies for PFAS other than this, but there's nothing that we're aware of that's available yet that's a new novel technology that could be used in a full-scale large treatment process that can process up to 30 million gallons per day like we have right now.
Right along those lines, I have a whole house system. You've heard of those, you see them in Costco. There's various vendors. When this came up last week, I called mine. I put it in 2018. It's purported to last for 10 years, then you got to replace the tanks. Costs a couple $1,000s. And I called that vendor to say, do they specifically weed this out? They said 98%. So that's something you'd have to spend a couple grand, but you can put it on your house, and it purportedly lasts 10 years before the activated carbon has to be replaced and replenished. So that's, I did that in 2018. I'm going to make sure that mine's going in the meantime until this gets fixed.
Some research on that this week as well, and the information that I came back with on the whole house systems were that in some cases it presented some help with the PFAS, but it also created other issues with, because it takes out the chlorine and it takes other things and it creates problems in your pipe. So yeah, you're going to want to look at that really carefully. They said that the best system that you could, if you want to go ahead and filtrate all the chlorine and all that kind of stuff out of your, before it enters your home, that's great. but that the reverse osmosis is a must under your sink. If you're gonna drink it, you need the reverse osmosis.
Yeah, we got the whole house and the sink. so
That's what
it's
you're
over.
saying, we
Yeah.
need both.
A couple of things, learning a lot tonight. The neighboring water systems, Otay and whatever San Diego has, I'm sure you guys have been collaborating and sharing these reports that you have to provide. Do these other services, do they use a water, like a reverse? No, do they use just groundwater? Like is Otay only groundwater or San Diego only groundwater? Are we the only ones that have been using reservoir? And if that is the case, what I'm hearing, because you have to report these PFAS, you've been doing it since, on the reservoir, only since October, yet 5 or 6 years ago, you were mandated to do the other water, what do you call it, groundwater. Why wouldn't you have thought to check your 50% source of water? That makes me feel, I have a problem with trust with just hearing that, and I want you to know that.
That's a fair question. We follow the regulatory guidance. Fair question.
You had to have known the greater source of your water could be in a bad way as well. I can't see you ignoring that just because it wasn't a mandatory thing to do.
I have a statement and a question. Basically, we've heard some good comments about you can purchase your own facilities to put in your home, which is great. We know that I think it was about 8 years ago, we put a new pipeline from the reservoir right down through the center of Bonita. I don't remember the size of it, but you said you inducted it up at the reservoir. So we don't need it at fire plugs or, things like that, or other facilities that could be drinking the water. So now we're looking at the cost to the taxpayers. So I would say, our board of directors getting any kind of information? For example, I hear that they're considering putting solar in the reservoir. So I'm saying, if I had a priority, I'd want the water to be clean and not worry about the electricity. So are they coming to these meetings to get to meet their people?
Correct. So the our board of directors is just as important as this information is what we're providing to the public.
Yep. We're talking about reverse osmosis, which I have in my home. I'm thinking about the families that maybe don't have the resources, the funding, the low-hanging fruit education, right? So I'm wondering two things, if you guys have considered rebates or is it effective? Like I'm just thinking really simple things that people can do in their homes, that you can educate people on your website, like the Brita water filter. Say they can't afford that reverse osmosis, and are rebates something that is being considered? Because we need kind of like short-term, kind of quick solutions to help people feel a little bit more comfortable, if that makes sense.
Understood, and I don't have an answer for you right now, but I can say we are taking note of all these questions, and these are all things that we can and will discuss. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I had my house water tested a couple of, once a year for the last couple of years, and I don't remember if there was any mention of the PFAS level like that report.
I don't know what they're testing for. I mean, I can only speak from experience. I live in the service area myself, and I've had people come to my home, and typically they're looking at total dissolved solids when I've had people come by my house. But we have plenty of minerals in the water, and that's totally natural. So I don't know I can't speak to any specific vendor though, what they're testing for.
Is there any way for homeowners to have their water tested at their home?
For PFAS, sure. And anybody could find a certified contract laboratory and have the test performed, but they are in the upwards of $700 to $900 per sample range. It's not a cheap test to perform.
So when we do get this filtration up and running on the reservoir, I'm one of those people that measure the solids in my water, but I have a tester and I measure that. And consistently, the tap water's way over the 500 that is supposedly allowable. And I know a lot of that is because it's reservoir water and there's a lot of murky stuff floating around in our water, so that's where solids come from. So my question is, when they do that filtration, will that eliminate a lot of the solid particles?
It's not going to be designed to reduce the mineral content in the water. So like they're going to be bonding this, it depends on what we use, ion exchange granite activated carbon, but they're absorptive technologies, but not necessarily designed to remove like calcium and magnesium and carbonates, which are primarily what the total dissolved solids are. And yes, you're correct, at times we may be above the 500 level. The upper threshold in California is 1,000. And generally speaking, the water in all of Southern California has very high TDS. Even the imported water supplies that travel through the Colorado River, because it's passing over lots of formation, lots of rock, and so it's picking up mineral along the way. So it's very typical in our region of the world.
I did want to share with everyone as well, drinking bottled water is really not the solution either. Depending on where the bottles have been stored, whether they've been stored in a warehouse, if they've been heated, if they've been sitting in a parking lot in the sun, they're plastic. And coming from a good friend who's also a water expert, that a lot of the bottled water is more toxic than what we're talking about here, if you plan on just getting bottled water.
Can I ask a question?
My question is that you have a plan to do the filtering system, but you're not going to do the reverse osmosis. Is that because of costs or because will they have the same results?
Sure. So I see a few challenges with reverse osmosis. Although it's a great technology to remove it, the challenge with reverse osmosis is disposal. So when you have a reverse osmosis process, now I can use our desalination facility as an example, but not all the water that goes through the reverse osmosis turns into drinking water. There's what's called a brine or a reject or a waste stream, all the same thing, and you may hear the words used interchangeably. But that has to go somewhere, right? So that would require building a discharge line that goes somewhere, either way out to the lower Sweetwater River or San Diego Bay, and the cost for doing that would be significant. Then you would also have to balance that with the fact that you would be removing all the minerals from the water, and so you may even have to potentially install other treatment technologies to then bring the mineral content in the water back up so that it's not corrosive and meets corrosion standards for lead and copper. So I think reverse osmosis, although it's good for PFAS removal, it could present other challenges for having it up at the surface water plant. Yes.
I have a question. Should the voters or politicians decide to put solar panels in Sweetwater Reservoir, are you thinking of mitigation for the chemicals that it's going to drop into our water supply?
Good question.
Yeah.
So, thanks for the question. You know, that we're not really addressing that issue now. I mean, there's no firm proposal to use solar panels at this point.
I imagine there's a lot of support for it.
Well, I'm not going to get into this discussion. I mean, the issue here, we're dealing with the substance that is a challenge. And I want to take the pause to welcome our Director Elizabeth Cox. She's Director of Bonita, Division 5 elected official. So she sits in our governing board. So we want to recognize her presence here. And any questions, certainly, we have a PFAS hotline, but also, we also address them to her if there's any specific, as her being the representative for this area. Sorry. More questions? Anybody else? You were just thinking, so let's go.
No bad news.
Moving forward, addressing your timeline here, and looking forward, what kind of information can we look for coming from you people regarding the future testing and, more importantly, the plans as a result of those tests?
Sure. So eventually some decisions are going to have to be made agency-wide, and those decisions are going to be required to, that can't just be made at the staff level. They're going to be expensive decisions that are going to need to be made at the level of the governing board, and so those will be public decisions that'll have to be made as far as how we address this, especially at capital infrastructure, millions of dollars. Those are things that'll have to be seriously considered and publicly approved. So it'll be
Forward to these type of meetings with your representing findings on maybe a quarterly basis, or?
That's a good question. So this is the last scheduled meeting that we have right now, as I presented, but I don't have information at this time as to when we may have another one in this card.
Thanks, Justin. So I think there was a question about our governing board. So we have public meetings. We're required to have that, and there's most of the months, 2 public meetings a month. The second and fourth Wednesday of the month. They're at 5 p.m. at our headquarters. That's 505 Garrett. That's H Street and 3rd, right up next to the court. So these are public meetings, so everyone's welcome. You can address the board with 3 comments. Usually allow 3 minutes for comments on anything that's not on the agenda, or if there's anything specific to the agenda. This is certainly a topic that is of great interest to the governing board. We schedule these meetings. I think I did mention earlier that this is the 3rd public workshop. We did have a community advisory work group meeting. That's the 4th Tuesday of the month at our Reynolds facility. That is the desalination plant, groundwater desalination plant. In this work group, it's just we talk about a variety of topics throughout the year. It means once a month, except November and December. And then last month in January 25th, we talked about PFAS. There's another meeting next Tuesday, and we're going to continue the conversation. So if you have any other questions, feel free to come by. That meeting's at 5 on next Tuesday. And it's informal, so feel free to come by, and really we'll try to have just get feedback. So going back to the governing board, they meet all the months. July starts meetings, and then November there's one meeting, December they show one meeting. But to my point, as we move forward, with results, these results get presented to the board, so that we notify, we inform our governing board about our findings, make sure that, and it's certainly to the board, but it's really to the public, right? So for anyone, these are public meetings. And then we also have a Zoom broadcast of whoever can make it to the actual meeting. But we post the agenda. Has to be done by law 72 hours before. So the meetings these are regular meetings. So if it's on Wednesday, then we usually post by Friday. There's other, just not to get too technical with this, but there's also an ability of emergency, right? We can schedule a special meeting, and that has a shorter posting requirement. So we found something now that is, certainly of utmost importance. We talk to the board, we work with our chair, we'll get a special meeting scheduled, and then present the topic.
My question, since you mentioned the board meetings, Carlos, if you're on the PFAS mailing list, will you be notified when something goes to the board?
Specifically,
Please, will you?
Well, okay, we'll try.
It seems to me.
We look at the agenda. Hold on a second. I think we're, at the last meeting, if you sign up for the mailing, we're trying to streamline it such that if there's an automatic if there's an update to the webpage, it automatically generates an email. We're trying to work on that.
Does your website have your agenda for each meeting?
Yes.
So it's there 72 hours before the meeting, I would imagine?
Yes. So I think what the sender is asking is if there's anything of interest regarding PFAS, that we use that PFAS mailing list to let everybody know, hey, there's a topic added to the next week's agenda. I think 5% I'm saying great words. It helps. It just takes away the money to
I am signed up for almost all of their mailing lists, but it seems to me, given the amount of money involved in this particular issue, people would at least want to know that it's going forward to the board. You invited us.
I think.
I'd like to know, moving forward, we're already over the limits that are safe for the public. So I'd like to know what Sweetwater Authority plans on doing for outreach to the general public. I mean, there's a lot of the public that would not know about your meetings, not be able to attend your meetings. But those people, all of the ratepayers and the users of the water need to be notified of all the levels that are going to be coming out so that they have the ability. Most people that I talk to have no idea this is going on. So they need to be notified what's going on. They need to be notified that they need to protect themselves with reverse osmosis. Those that can afford it can do it. Those that can't, maybe seek help getting it. But the general public needs to be notified by Sweetwater Authority.
Well, yeah, I mean, I will take, and I think that's certainly we have a communications team that is working on that. We do issue, social media. I don't know what percentage certainly uses social media. We do send the newsletters to all of our customers. So with your bill, when you get your bill, if you're signed up for online, you get an online PDFs showing. So it is a good point. We do try. We send out as much as certainly as much outreach as we really able to. Did you want to?
I'll add just briefly. Hi, Suzanne, and no part of the outreach team. But yeah, to Carlos's point, and to your point, Matt, we really need to get out to reach people where they're at. This is obviously very early in the process, and we know we need to touch every customer and also renters. I think that can be difficult to reach. So I think once we know more information with testing, we're discovering, we've gotten a lot of feedback on what we've done already, what's working, what's not, and we made some refinements along the way. So I think we'll continue to do that. But with that goal in mind of reaching every customer, because to your point, this is something that affects everyone, and we want to make sure they have access to the internet.
And just the outreach that I've done on this, unless you say something extreme like you're being poisoned, people aren't paying any attention. So for a little thing in their bill that goes in the trash when they pull out the envelope and it's stuck to pay it, they aren't reading it. It needs to be in their face.
Absolutely.
People are paperless.
And paperless, I think it's both print and digital. And then I also think, to your point, how is this going to affect me long term? Obviously, we talked about cost, and these are all things that are coming into focus a bit more once we know, the testing results. We have this fuller picture of that. I think those things will, to your point, those are going to motivate engagement, and we're going to have probably a much more broader reach because of that. So, but yeah, I appreciate your point.
Okay.
Question for clarification. Sweetwater Authority is made up of 7 members, is that correct?
Well, Sweetwater Authority is
Well, let me ask the question. Doesn't Joe List and the rest of us have a separate board also?
No, Sweetwater Authority, our governing board is 7 members. There's the 5 members elected from South Bay Water, formerly known as South Bay Irrigation District, and National City appoints 2 members to our board.
Right.
So our governing board is 7 members.
But yeah, so you don't have a second board that meets separately for just the South Bay?
There is a South Bay Water board meets once a month.
Well, that's what I'm asking. It meets once a month, right?
Correct, yes.
And do they take up the same subject as the Sweetwater Authority?
They do not. So South Bay is the governing arm of Sweetwater Authority, but all the operating issues are decided by the Sweetwater Authority board.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's just Robert had a question, so we'll give it to you, sir. Yes.
Considering we have a consulting group participating with the outreach that's going on right now, and we've been told many times that the questions and considerations from the public are being tracked and kept record of, when should we start to see some sort of display of that information from this outreach that you've done in the last 4 meetings?
All the information from the last workshop we had at Chula Vista, the Chula Vista Library, is posted on our webpage, on the PFAS education page. Today's Q&A probably give us a few days to...
It's up there. All the questions from the past meetings and up till the last meeting, they're there on the PFAS page at the bottom. You just scroll all the way down.
So the information there, Robert.
Right, and specifically, I'm talking about the questions that are being asked, if there's any concerns. Some things aren't answered on the website, and maybe like the testing updates, the different things. Is there gonna be like 6 months, you know, and we'll see the outcome from this, or is this something that is just this?
This all the presentations from each one of the workshops is posted. This presentation we posted. The questions from this specific workshop will be posted. You know, just again, give us a few days. But all the information is being put there, and there's the PFAS like the email address. I think it's pfas@sweetwater.org. Any questions? Write to pfas@sweetwater.org. We try to get back within 48 hours. There's a hotline. I mean, I think you're gonna get you know, information on just general information. But if you want to communicate with us, the best I recommend just going to PFAS. Write to pfas@sweetwater.org, and we're trying to also compile those questions and put them in some kind of a, you know, FAQ, frequently asked questions. So the more information that we get, then that information gets put into that webpage.
And I'll just add on to Robert, if there's a question you don't see and you want to see that represented, as Carlos said, just email us or give us a call. We'll add that.
Yeah, I think John.
One last quick. Bear with me. We have been in the front line trying to learn what's going on. There must be a unity of command, we call it the military. County should have a say on the standard regionally. How do we relate this effort, sir, with the County of San Diego as a whole? And number two question is, the headnuts has to rely on dispensing machine. We bring our empty gallons, 25 cents before, now it's 50 cents per gallon. The have-nots cannot afford the reverse osmosis in their own home, so we rely on that. How safe is it, sir?
Yes. Well, as far as the county, you know, each agency is different. It's unique. You know, we are unique. We serve as a particular service area, and we have a governing board. County Water Authority, we are. If you're talking about the San Diego County Water Authority, they're the wholesaler. They're a different agency. We are part of that agency, along with 21 other agencies. So that is a large JPA, Joint Powers Authority. And the responsibility of the County Water Authority is to bring imported water that they get through a variety of sources, mostly Colorado River, water from IID, Carlsbad diesel. So we're independent agencies. So as far as the regulations, you know, counties, we respond to the regulators. I think Justin mentioned this, they have their own studies, they have you know, staff that works on this. We don't, we get direction from the regulators. To answer your second question, the authority has no control over these vending machines. These vending machines are regulated, not by us. Usually, I know bottled water usually is regulated by the FDA. We're regulated by the EPA. So our water has to go through rigorous testing. We do a lot of testing. It used to be that once a year we send you a summary. Now I believe it's twice a year with the consumer confidence score. It will be. So still once a year. Once a year, every customer gets a report from us telling you if we exceeded a value, if we exceeded a standard. We conduct. Justin will tell you because he runs the you know, the plant and supervises the staff. We collect thousands of samples a year. So we are heavily regulated. We're in constant communication with the Division of Drinking Water. They are the regulator. And if there's any issues, you know, they provide guidance. So I hope that answers the question.
I have a question. Is it about cooking? Does boiling get rid of the PFAS from the water, or does it penetrate through your boiled egg?
You know, it's just not. So as you boil, you're reducing your water volume, so you're actually concentrating a little more. But it's not a method. I think Justin alluded to some of these newer methods. I'm sure that technology will get probably there at some point, but so far there's 3 known methods to remove PFAS. And there's a lot of pilots, a lot of experimental that I don't think we're kind of in a position to say that we'd like for this one or that one. You know, there's a whole industry out there of engineers, consultants that are looking at this very closely. Again, this is something that, you know, not only statewide, nationwide, it's everywhere. You know, these substances have been used since the 1940s. Now, you know, every place is a little bit different, but they're so indestructible that, you know, you just need a special technology, which is the ones that Justin mentioned. Watch.
We've been to other meetings, and at each meeting, there's usually a packet for the public to take home and review with their neighbors. Is there a reason that the Sweetwater Authority chose not to bring packets for everyone to share?
I'm not really sure what packets you're referring to. Choose that.
It's on their website.
You might be referring to the presentation copies?
Yeah.
This, we just didn't tonight. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all available online. I mean,
But
it's
yeah,
public.
we do have that posted right now. And then, yeah, that's all available as a PDF on the website.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Check?
Is there a state report on all water districts and their reporting of PFAS? So we can kind of see where we are we different, are we way out there, or?
Absolutely. So the State Water Control Board has been asking, you know, not only certainly water districts, but wastewater, you know, pieces that deal with wastewater to start sampling. Now, this has been going on for a few years. There's a large database. My understanding in talking to Justin is that all the results from the UCMR that he described, that's what triggered this, is also publicly available information. You can probably get this nationwide. Yeah, this is publicly available data, and I believe EPA is compiling it into some. Now, you might have to go navigate like the webpage and look for it, but
That would really help us to know,
Sure.
are we another Flint, Michigan? You know, I don't want to find out 10 years from now that we stood alone.
Yeah, we'll look at that, we'll look at maybe kind of providing the link as to where you can access, you know, publicly available information from EPA and the state, or maybe DDW has a database. And then we'll add this to our PFAS education page. Comments? Yes?
And I noticed on the slides, you showed a graphic of PFAS floating in the reservoir. And then when you showed the glass of drinking water, I realized we all don't drink 5 gallon or 5 liquid-sized swimming pools of water. But wouldn't it be important to put a question mark with the PFAS symbol next to the bottle of water in your presentation so that people would know that there is a concern with their drinking water?
Do you want to handle this question? It's hard. I mean, or maybe Suzanne, let me go back.
Try to go back.
So just so I understand, so you're looking at this, so by the way, another way to look at this, are all of you familiar with the Rose Bowl?
The Rose Bowl?
Yeah, the Rose Bowl
Yes.
in Pasadena, so.
Yes.
So if you can't, you know, 5 Olympic-sized swimming pools, if you think about the Rose Bowl full of water, it's 1 drop in the Rose Bowl. That is roughly equivalent to this. So this light, is this the one that you're?
No, the cup of water that would be a glass of drinking water.
So we don't have something. Are you suggesting that we add a slide with a drinking glass of water and?
Well, I would suggest that you would put a question mark. People have talked about people that aren't aware, and maybe they're economically not savvy, or maybe they can't read, or maybe they don't do online thing. If you look at the average age in this room, I'm sure people do online stuff and they can, social media. I don't. And I think it would be wise to actually make this information actually presentable, so it maybe would give someone alarm that, hey, there could be a problem. Not that they're gonna, like I said, not that they're gonna drink a Rose Bowl full of water at any one sitting, but we also said we don't know what the effects are, the health effects, because that's not your expertise, so.
Yeah, well, I comment noted, I think we'll relay this information to our communications team and take that into account. Anyone else?
I just had a question about swimming. Is it safe or does it damage people?
Swimming in, like say Sweetwater Reservoir?
Swimming in a swimming pool with water.
Your pool has putting all kinds of chemicals in it.
But depends on where you swim. It depends on, you know, if you swim in one of the pools that is in our service area, they're likely getting this water. So as Justin mentioned, we're required to sample at the point of delivery to the system. So we're not testing, you know, individual accounts for PFAS. We're testing, you know, system-wide when the water enters the system.